As always, there are a lot of key issues in the news this week, and we know it can be a lot to sort through. So, through the Danbury Institute's Life and Liberty Brief, we've been watching stories throughout the past week that may be of interest to you, and we want to bring you up to speed with 6 headlines from this past week. We begin with a story on Title IX. As background, you probably heard that the Biden administration released new rules regarding Title IX, a set of regulations that were originally intended to protect women and girls in schools and sports. Now, the new rules turn Title IX on its head and actually put girls and women at risk by letting males into female restrooms and locker rooms, letting boys take girls' scholarships, letting boys compete in girls' sports, and removing due process protections for students accused of sexual misconduct by eliminating the standard of cross-examination for an accuser. This brings us to our very first of 6 articles. This one in the Washington Examiner, where a Texas lawmaker is calling for the state to stop taking federal money for schools in order to not be subject to the new Title IX rules. This must go through committee, so we'll see what happens. Next, Axios reports that the Arizona House of Representatives has voted to repeal the 1864 abortion ban that was at the center of controversy about a week ago. This came up because the Arizona Supreme Court allowed the law to be effective now that Roe v. Wade has been overturned. This has outraged Democrats who vowed to get rid of the law at the earliest possible opportunity. Several Republicans jumped on board with that and agreed to roll back these measures, presumably trying to look more mainstream. The measure will now be going to the Senate in Arizona next week. There are also significant efforts in Arizona to enshrine abortion rights into the state constitution and efforts to oppose that as well. And this is something that's happening in several states around the nation. Which brings us to Florida, which stands to be the next big battleground for abortion. Although Governor DeSantis has already signed the Heartbeat Protection Act into law, there are major efforts to enshrine abortion access into the state constitution this fall through Amendment 4. This would permit abortions until the point of viability, estimated around 24 weeks, or when necessary to protect a patient's health, which we all know to be a very loose standard that can permit abortion at essentially any point. National Public Radio reported on Amendment 4 and what opponents and advocates are saying about it. To pass, the amendment would have to have approval from a supermajority or 60%. This next several months will be critical in affecting public opinion on this issue. Next, the Times of Israel, a Jerusalem-based newspaper, reports that their Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, has equated the anti-Semitic mobs on U.S. college campuses to 1930s Germany, when Jews were barred from attending classes and subjected to intense harassment. Columbia University has been at the center of controversy this week regarding pro-Hamas, pro-Palestinian protests on its campus. Several legislators have traveled to New York City to speak in support of Jewish students being targeted there, including Speaker of the House Mike Johnson. In the last 2 articles we'll touch on this week, first we look at West Virginia, where Outkick reports that girls competing in track and field events walked through the motions of their meet and refusing to compete with a male student attempting to be transgendered. This is significant because largely girls have been acquiescing to transgender students, infiltrating their sports and their locker rooms, and even parents have not stood up against this absurdity the way many would like to see and the way many have expected to see. Perhaps this marks a beginning of common sense Americans standing up to say no more to males infiltrating female sports and spaces. We'll see. Finally, we look to Tennessee, where the General Assembly has passed legislation to give the death penalty to child rapists. Voz Media reports that the measure now awaits the signature of Governor Bill Lee and that the Democratic Party in Tennessee rejected the measure in its entirety. Democrats claimed the death penalty for child rapists is not compatible with the right to life, a right to which they typically and ironically do not appeal, and a right they do not respect in regard to children in the womb. If you are receiving our Life and Liberty Brief by email, you will also see content there from the Danbury team this week, including Supreme Court hearing oral arguments in regard to Idaho's pro-life case and a deeper dive into the Title IX issue and what the new rules mean for students at schools and in sports. If you're not already receiving these emails, please be sure to subscribe today at danburyinstitute.org.